Everyone. So today I want to do a lesson about how to provide a helpful peer review. Some of you may have done peer reviews in other classes before, but I find that a lot of first year college students have not done formal peer review processes for their classes before, and sometimes don't know exactly what that should look like. So in today's lesson, I just want to provide a few helpful tips. Um, so first of all, why do we do peer reviews? This is something that you can do formally, like in this class when it's being required for this paper, or it's something that you can do informally, and it's something that I recommend doing even when it's not required for a paper. Peer reviews are great because sometimes someone will pick something up in an assignment prompt or rubric that we've missed. Often I know that I can read through something, think that I fully understand it, go ahead, start writing a paper, and then I start to talk to a friend and I realize that something they're doing in an assignment is something that I haven't been doing and need to be doing. The peer review process makes sure that if you've missed something, someone else can help pick up on that and make sure that you're meeting all the requirements for an assignment. Another good reason for doing peer reviews is because often our words make sense and sound really good to us. This happens to me all the time, but other people can more objectively notice what phrases don't make as much sense or sound as clear as they could. Obviously, in my head, everything I say just sounds brilliant. When it comes out of my mouth, it doesn't always make sense. This happens as a teacher all the time, where I'm in front of a class and I'm trying to explain something, and one of the best comments a question a student can ask is, do you mind rephrasing that? Because what makes sense to me might not make sense to them. Rephrasing it often can help it make sense to them. So, in a classroom, I can have students saying that to me. I can have students emailing me asking for clarification. On a formal paper, you want to be able to catch as much of that stuff as you can before you turn it in. And so the peer review process can really help you with that. And then finally, because getting feedback from a friend or classmate means that you can fix things before they affect your grade on a paper. I know that I'd much rather have a friend point out a mistake to me than to find out that I made a mistake and missed it after I turned in a paper, after it's been graded. So for this class, the basic thing that I want you to do is, first of all, hopefully you've all already read the rubric for this paper, but if you haven't, and even if you have, reread the rubric before reading your peers' papers. I am going to be grading your papers with that rubric in mind, and so the feedback you give should also have that rubric in mind. And then after you've read the rubric, read each paper thinking specifically about, are there any grammar or phrasing issues that stand out to you? Mention those to your peer. Based on your understanding of the rubric, what are the paper's strong points? And then also, if you were the author of this paper, what would you want to make sure to change before turning this paper in for a final grade? I think that this is a really important concept for just the mindset I encourage you to have during this process. For me, sometimes for me, and I think a lot of times for my students, it's hard to give constructive feedback. But, and even for me, as an instructor, sometimes it's hard to want to tell someone things that they need to work on because, especially when there's so much good stuff in a paper, you want them to feel good about that stuff, and you don't want to tell them things that might not be perfect about a paper. But my mindset is always, how can sorry about that slide thing, how can I, in the criticism and suggestions and help that I give in this class, help my students in their future classes? And I think of it as, I'm helping them out. I'm giving them ideas now that can help them into the future. And I think that if you use that same mindset as you do the peer review process, if you think, For me, I'd much rather hear it from a friend and be able to fix it before I turn a paper in. I think that most of the people in this class probably feel the same way. They'd much rather get some constructive feedback from a friend and then be able to incorporate that or, consider it for incorporation before turning in a paper. I think that that can help the peer review process feel like something kind and helpful and encouraging and not something critical or mean or, tearing down each other. So I just encourage you to keep that mindset as you are reading through one another's papers. So in terms of how to write your paper or your feedback, the formula that I am encouraging you use for this assignment is first to think of one thing that the paper does well and then share that, and think of 2 areas in the rubric where you think the author of the paper could improve. So, and share those. Could it be their thesis and their paragraph organization, their transitions and their conclusions, their grammar and their introduction? Just think of 2 things that you would recommend the author work on and share those. So, obviously, I am giving you a structure to follow in this class where feedback is required. But as I said, I really recommend you follow the peer review process even when it's not required. So if you're giving feedback for a class without a formal peer review process, or even in this class for the final paper where we're not going to have a formal peer review process, things I would recommend you do. First of all, ask for the assignment prompt. Ask for the rubric if there is one. Check both of those out and then give feedback with that prompt and rubric in mind. And then lastly, in terms of incorporating feedback, big thing, I've said it before, I'll say again, don't be afraid to make big changes. In fact, plan ahead and make time for them. A good paper does not magically appear in its first draft perfectly structured. When I was working on a big project for my graduate degree, there'd be entire, 5s and 10s of pages that I'd have to just kind of scrap, use as material for a new outline, and totally rewrite an entire section of this project. And it is not fun to do that. Often you don't have to do that with an entire paper, but you might have to do that with an entire introduction. You might have to do that with a paragraph here and there, a conclusion. But I have found that when I am willing to make those big changes, when I'm willing to invest that time, when I'm willing to sacrifice something that I've worked hard on as a first draft and use that to build off onto a second draft, I end up with something that I like a lot better, and I know that I've become a much stronger writer because of my willingness to do that. So I really recommend that you make time to take your feedback and be willing to make big changes because of it. The second thing I want to say, though, is just because someone makes a suggestion doesn't mean that you need to take it. Part of the peer review process is deciding when someone has a good idea and when to trust yourself. So if something just doesn't jive with you, you can always email me and ask me. Or you can just, if you feel pretty good that something is a good suggestion and another thing isn't, go with those instincts and do the revision that you want to do. I hope these notes have been helpful. I'm really looking forward to reading your papers, and as always, reach out if you have questions. Thanks, bye!